evening and welcome to Visionaries Lounge, the show that seeks to take you higher by sharing the stories of South Africans who inspire. Now, I'm almost tempted to say to you, sit back and relax, but actually, I prefer you to be stirred up inside and encouraged to step out of your comfort zone and go courageously and confidently into the direction of your dreams, because that is exactly what our guest this evening has done. Without a shred of experience in computers, Mirriam Zwane went on to win accolades and become an accomplished IT specialist in South Africa, a pioneer. Good evening to you, Sis Nuska, as you are affectionately known. Let's begin by talking about what it was like growing up.
Growing up in Dlamini as Soweto was really good fun. Mom and dad and 8 siblings. I'm the number 3. In between the 2 and myself, there's a boy that died, you know, so we could have been 9. So I followed that one that died. So, but I grew up knowing my 7 siblings, and it was just a big, happy family.
And what was that like? I'm sure being the one in the middle, you had to jostle for some attention. Did that make you stronger and more resilient?
It made me strong because we had to constantly fight with my second eldest sister, who was my dad's favorite because she looked like my dad. And so whenever my dad brought something, whether it's sweets or whatever, you know, she would be the one getting those sweets and then dishing them out to us.
Talk to me also about perhaps some of the challenges of growing up. Having so many siblings, it must not have been easy. They must not have been enough to go around sometimes.
No, it wasn't easy, especially my dad picked up TB from working in the mines quite early in our lives. So my dad was in hospital for many years, more than 10 years in hospital. So basically my mother was on her own looking after the 8 kids. And my dad used to make shoes while lying in the hospital bed, and would go to hospital and get our school fees money or food money from him. So he was quite entrepreneurial, you know, like he didn't take this thing of TB as something that knocks him out and he didn't know what to do. He still made ends meet for us, you know, so it was quite nice. My mother also, she was very good at she was a magician basically with food. You know, she had a vegetable garden. We ate from the vegetable garden. She would buy a loaf of bread, and just looking at that loaf of bread, she would cut 8 exact slices. So no one would complain that my slice is thinner or the other one is bigger. Yeah. Yes. And even an apple, she would just cut that apple into 8 tiny strips, but each one of us would get a share.
She was very resourceful.
She was indeed. And
is that why this reminds you a lot of your childhood?
This mug really reminds me of my childhood. If you look at this mug, it's really gone and you know, it's traveled, it's fallen, but it's still working. If you put it on the stove, it will still take heat. Whereas if you put your crockery on the porcelain on the stove and it's gonna break. So this one, it's still gonna be like a multi-purpose.
Let's speak about the older Mirriam now. You've grown up, you finished school. What did the world look like to you then? What did you want to do?
Well, I had dreams like any young girl, you know, I had dreams, but, you know, during our time it was very difficult because you dreamt of big things, but there were lots of hurdles around. The big thing for me was to help my mom as a child. And I remember saying to my mom, the minute I get a job, you must say goodbye to poverty. And it actually worked out like that, you know, because I was very lucky. I really didn't care what type of a job I was doing. I made sure that I would do that job and learn as many other things as possible. My very first job, I worked for a furniture shop, and I was doing filing. And the person that we reported to, that the manager of the company actually saw that spark in me. I don't know what he saw, but he saw that spark and he told the other people that I worked with to say, teach her as many things as possible. And
you end up at Philips.
I end up at Philips.
Eventually.
I end up at Philips as a receptionist.
Black woman.
Yes.
Successfully landing a very, very admirable job during that time.
Yeah.
And you grow in the company, I'd imagine.
Yes, yeah. I started as a receptionist also there, and I felt restless. I really wanted to do something big, and I don't know what it was at the time, you know. And one day I just saw an advert. They were looking for a trainer, and like IT trainer. I did not really understand what IT meant because I had never touched a computer before. Yeah. And I went and applied for the job, you know.
Knowing full well you did not have the qualifications.
Yes. And after a few interviews, I got the job, and I didn't qualify for that job. And that's how it all started.
And when do the awards come in? Because, I mean, I can't even go through your list of accolades. They're just way too long. It'll take up the whole 24 minutes that we have of the show. Yeah. You have accomplished exceedingly amazing things in times when IT was even unheard of in South Africa. Yeah. You know, it wasn't as famous as it is today. Absolutely. Today, everybody's studying IT, you know, ICT, information communication technology. But back in that time when you were operating, it was virtually unheard of, especially for a young black woman. Yes. So when do the awards start streaming in then?
Well, the awards actually streamed in because of the social work that I was doing. Because, you know, like all companies were doing, we were doing almost like the same type of thing, you know, like writing software, training people, looking after their infrastructure. But my company was one of the very few companies, if not the only one, that still had time to help people. But the big thing was when I started working at Leoko Prison with the young boys and taught them also ICT. So now companies are competing. We all have like very similar things to offer, but my company was offering over and above, and I do believe that's how we won those awards.
Now, is this while you were still employed, or you had just then become an employer?
Because I had just become an employer.
I want to speak about that. You are flourishing at Philips, you're doing very well. You then decide to walk away from that comfort of knowing that I'm getting a paycheck at the end of every month, and you venture out to start Praxis Computing. Yes. And it was, I think, about 4 months old. You and two of your partners step out into the great unknown and become entrepreneurs in the early 1990s.
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
It was very scary because for 3 years we were building this company and we didn't get paid. So when we made money, we made sure we paid rent, we made sure we paid our staff, we made sure we pay whoever, you know, like our debtors, and we knew that we were building a big thing here. It was an unknown territory for me of running my own company. I've never ran a company before.
But nabantu at that time, I'm sure how can you be starting something new? Entrepreneurship, it wasn't a buzzword like it is today.
Yeah. Well, you know, like people were discouraging me, you know, because at Philips I was quite comfortable, I was known then. People were saying you're crazy to leave your company to start something. Maybe it will fail. You know, they kept on saying there's a possibility of it failing, you being a black person, number one. But also ICT is not a place where you can just venture. Maybe go to catering. And I thought, no, there is something for me there. You know, God has made it possible for me to start working, you know, like in the ICT space at Philips. So there's definitely another level for me to go, and that's to start my business.
Now, there is another element of shock that comes in shortly after that success that you experience in your own business. And I want to delve into that after we come back in just a moment, because at the height of her success, something else happens. You'll have to find out what in just a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. Thank you ever so much for joining us. We continue our discussion with an award-winning pioneer of IT in South Africa. Sis Nuska, just before we left off our conversation, you were telling me about how you left the comfort of a steady job to go to a new frontier, starting a new business. It's picking up, it's doing great. How are you feeling at that time?
At that time, I was on cloud 9. Basically, everything that I dreamt of as a little kid, it was now happening, you know, and I was just so happy.
You were making money.
I was making money. I was getting known out there, you know, like I was doing TV interviews, I was doing radio shows. I was invited at companies to come and speak to staff, you know, about how I started and how I'm making it.
And then there was the dark moments when you lost your son.
Yeah.
Take me through that path.
Yeah, it was a very sad moment because we had spoken with my children, like I wanted to find out who's going to take over my company, you know, when I retire to do something different. And all my 3 children were not interested because they wanted to start something themselves for their own. And my youngest son, who was also another IT guru, said he'll take over. And when he passed on in 2007, he was just turning 20. We were busy preparing for his birthday when he passed on in a car accident. That was almost like a door that shut in my face, a very, very painful door.
In fact, this picture that we have here was taken just before he passed away.
Just before he died, yeah. We were doing a shoot for a magazine, a story for a magazine, and that was the last picture that I took of him and my other daughter, Cindy.
I mean, I can imagine no parent wants to bury a child. What was he like, and how did you deal then with the passing?
He was a very smart child. In fact, all my 3 children, you know, like used to say, like, he's smarter than them. You know, I have very smart children, I must say. But they all said Vuyo is very smart. He was a clever child. There was a big difference between the 3 and him. So he was always competing and studying and researching so that he can have a positive, constructive dialogue with them. So he was very smart, and I do believe he was destined for bigger things.
So round about that time, you're dealing with a lot, you're going through a lot. You make another startling announcement that you now want to leave this new business, this money that you're making. You want to do something that is, you know, maybe a pastime for a lot of people, philanthropy. You want to go into the humanitarian space. What was that decision like?
Yeah, it was very difficult because at the time, our small company was starting to play in a bigger space. We were leading in software for the funders and grant makers. We had organizations that were using our software, like overseas companies even, and we were leading in South Africa. But it was that time I felt there's a nudge for me to fulfill a higher calling, you know, of just laying everything down and just going to work for my church, you know, like in the CSI space, in the foundation. And people were shocked. So I knew even this would never fail. But people didn't understand what I was going through inside. Basically, I knew that when God was opening the doors for me, for my company, even the IT space, I knew that he was opening those doors for something else later on, but it had nothing to do with my space, you know, with the company, with making millions, but it had everything to do with helping people. And that's what made sense to me, but people didn't really understand what was happening in my head at the time.
At your lowest point, when things were seemingly falling apart, how did you feel inside?
Well, you know, sometimes being a Christian or like having something that you anchor your life on helps, you know, because I knew that everything is happening for a good reason, you know, and I knew that things that were happening to me, it is not because of something bad that I've done, but it is for something else, something better that's going to come out. So I had that belief myself that, you know, like it might look like I've lost everything, but I know that everything is going to be restored. There's joy. I have joy doing this work. I love it when I see smiles in people's faces, you know, when I do something for them, you know, through the work that I'm doing.
The place where you're at the moment, physically, spiritually, emotionally, how would you describe it?
I'm at my best. I'm at my highest. I'm very happy. Physically, I'm strong. I'm turning 60 in a few months' time, and I don't feel like a 60-year-old. I don't have a helper in my house. I do my cleaning, and it's a big house. I do my gardening. I have a garden full of roses that I've planted, you know, with my gardener. I eat from my garden like my mom taught me.
Did I hear you correctly? You said you're turning?
I'm turning 60 in a few months' time.
You know, this whole time I've been calling you Sis Nuska.
Yeah, and I've been smiling.
And I'm looking at you, and you're blending so beautifully with my set. I'm thinking this set was just made for you. And I'm calling you Sister Nuska because I'm thinking maybe late 40s, so she's not old enough to be my mother. I can't call her mom, you know, Mom Nuska. You are looking absolutely amazing.
Thank you so much.
Is it from the inside out?
It's definitely from the inside out. Yeah. It's definitely from the inside out. The lifestyle that I live, you know, because sometimes, you know, people do things and they think they're happy, because sometimes we live under this euphoria and under this illusion that we're happy because we're doing this, you know, we drink, or we always doing a certain sport, or we're always at a certain party, and we think, yes, we are happy. But at the end of the day, when you sleep on your own or with your spouse, what really matters comes back, you know, like when you are sleeping. So I sleep peacefully. I'm one of the people that sleeps soundly and enjoying my sleep.
And I think it has a lot to do with the work you do at Rivers Foundation.
Absolutely.
Tell us a bit more about that.
Rivers Foundation was launched in 2006, and I started in 2008. They were looking for somebody to run Rivers Foundation. It is an amazing foundation, one of the few foundations that takes no money for administration. So every penny that people donate to Rivers Foundation gets given to the poor, gets distributed to the poor. Currently, we are feeding close to 20,000 meals per week to school children per week. And the number just goes on and on. You know, like obviously next year we'll be raising that number. So we fix schools, we buy school uniform, we buy chairs, and we fix windows, we do painting. And because I have experience in that type of a thing, you know, I don't have to be telling people to paint. You know, I lead.
You're very hands-on.
Yeah, I'm very, very hands-on.
Yeah.
So the schools that we support, we have like a little packet that we do, like with a sanitary towels, but also with the toiletry packs, like the underarm, the soap, you know, the
just for hygiene purposes.
Just for hygiene, yes. You know, so that
it's a matter of dignity.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the schools that we're supporting, you know, like the absent days, you know, for the girls have dropped quite drastically, which means the girls are more at school and they're passing well. You know, like this has impacted on the pass rate also of the school kids, you know.
It sounds like you are living your best life, but I'd like to know if there's anything else that you'd want to do in the near future. So I'll ask you all that and more in just a moment. You be sure to stay right where you are. A warm welcome to you once again. We continue our conversation with a riveting woman who was groundbreaking in the space of IT in South Africa, Mirriam Zwane, who I just found out is actually just about to turn 60, but doesn't look a day over 16, right? But Sister Nuska, you have lived a number of lives. Wife, mother, left a comfortable job to start a thriving business, a successful business. You left to become an awe-inspiring philanthropist. In all of this, what has life taught you?
Many lessons. I have fear of nothing. You know, a lot of people don't do things because they have fear of the unknown. And I think my life, you know, even as a child, it taught me not to fear anything because I didn't know what was on the other side of the wall, you know, so I wanted to find out what's on the other side. So I still have that little girl in me, you know, when an opportunity comes, instead of me checking my comfort zone and saying, this is comfortable, I don't know whether I'll find something on the other side. You know, that TV show that says money or the box, you know.
Imali no mi
yeah, Imali no mi bogis, yeah. So bogis, you are taking a chance, yes, you know, like, so my life has actually been like that all the time, you know, like, let's take a risk. And I've been very lucky. All the risks that I've taken have actually turned out to be a good risk to take.
You seem like you've just been met by success everywhere you go. Have you ever not succeeded at anything? Have you ever had maybe an embarrassing moment or something you've done and you thought that was a bad idea?
Yeah, I've had a number of those, you know, like, but even those, for me, there was a lesson for me to take so that when I go to the next journey, I take that as a nugget for me to learn.
And what sort of lessons do you think South Africa should learn from your journey? Not the ones that you've shared personally, but if I'm looking at you and I'm going through whatever it is that I'm going through, what's that one message that you think you would share?
You know, people generally, they know what they want, generally, besides being taken by the wave of watching other people. So you know the talent that you have, like for instance, if it's singing, you definitely know. If it's knitting, if it's something, whatever it is, you generally know. And I always would say to people, just follow what has been planted in your heart. You know what it is, nobody can tell you, and nobody can sway you when you actually follow that dream. Follow your dream, follow the talent that you have, and God will actually give you even other nuggets as you start this journey, because you take one step and it takes other steps for you. And I think even for me, that's what happened. People must just take chances, yeah.
But with every step that we take, you are called upon to even grow or perhaps even compromise at time, depending on what it is that you're doing. What are those non-negotiables when it comes to you and your values?
Yes, I don't like it when people lie. And I don't like it when people tell lies about other people.
So we know what you don't like, but perhaps you can tell us what you do like. What's that one thing that just puts a smile on your face? It may be an object, it may be a sentiment, it may be an activity, but something that definitely puts a spring in your step.
Yeah. My love language is cleanliness. I like everything to be pristine. My house is in order. Where I work, everything is in order. That's my #1 love language. You know, cleanliness. I love clean house. I love clean surroundings, and I like to look good myself. You know, even when I'm doing my garden, I will wear my tracksuit, but I will still look good in my tracksuit.
It will be a color-coordinated tracksuit.
Sometimes it's not color-coordinated, but I'll make sure that I look good in, even if it's torn. It must look good on me. I like to look good, yeah.
And we can see it.
Absolutely.
And indeed, you do look good. And we thank you so much for helping us also feel good, because you said it was from the inside out.
Absolutely.
I've enjoyed myself. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. It is always a factor, but I trust that you've taken 1 or 2 golden nuggets from this conversation that we've had, and you're all the better for listening in. Thank you for your time. Let's do it again next week. Goodbye. God bless.
Each time I meet a person, I make sure I learn a lesson from that person, because I know that they've come to teach me a lesson. There are no bad teachers or good teachers, but teachers. So make sure when you meet somebody, you learn a lesson that was meant for you to learn from that person. Thank you and good night.